So let me ask you something. Do you think you're an honest person? Yeah, most of us would probably say yes. But what if I told you that lying, being dishonest, isn't some kind of character flaw? What if it's actually a core part of what makes us human? It's a wild thought, right? Well, today we're going to dive into the fascinating and maybe a little uncomfortable truth about lies. And this quote, man, it just hits the nail on the head. It kind of suggests that our ability to deceive isn't a bug in our system. You know, it's more like a built-in feature, one that's been with us for a very, very long time. So, yeah, it seems our knack for lying is just as fundamental to who we are as our need to trust people. And it turns out we're all pretty good at it in ways both big and small. But just how common is it really? Get ready for this. 1 to 2. That's how many times the average person lies per day. I know, right? That number comes from a huge study by social psychologist Bella DiPaolo. And you might be thinking, no way, not me. But stick with me here, because when you actually break down what counts as a lie, it starts to make a whole lot of sense. Okay, so let's dig into that. In our first section, we're going to look at the research that really, for the first time, showed just how natural this whole lying thing is for us. So here's how that study worked. DiPaolo got 147 adults to basically keep a diary of every single lie they told for a whole week. And what she found was fascinating. The huge majority were what we'd call white lies. You know, harmless little things to protect someone's feelings or to get out of small troubles like blaming a misunderstanding for not taking out the garbage. But here's the kicker. The study also found that most people admitted to telling at least 1 or 2 really serious, high-stakes lies in their lifetime. So it's a whole spectrum. All right, so if we're all doing it, you've got to wonder, when does it all begin? You probably picture a kid's first lie as this sad moment, right? A loss of innocence. But what if it's not that at all? What if it's actually a good thing? And that's a huge shift in how we think about this. A psychologist named Kang Lee says that when a toddler tells their first lie, it should actually be seen as a reassuring sign that their brain is growing just the way it's supposed to. It's a developmental milestone, kind of like taking their first steps or saying their first words. It means their brain is starting to do some really complex stuff. So, how in the world do you study this scientifically? Well, with a really clever experiment. Imagine this. A kid is asked to guess a hidden toy just by its sound. At first, it's super easy, like they hear a bark and guess dog. But then, the researcher throws a curveball. They play a sound that has nothing to do with the toy, like, say, Beethoven for a toy car. Then the researcher says, okay, I have to step out for a minute. Whatever you do, don't peek, and leaves the room. Of course, hidden cameras show most kids totally peek. They just can't help it. But the real test is what happens next. And the results? Wow, just look at this. They are absolutely staggering. When 2-year-olds peek, only about a third of them will lie about it. Fast forward to age 3, and it's a 50-50 shot, a total coin toss. But by the time they're 8, a massive 80% of the kids who peeked will look that researcher straight in the eye and say, nope, didn't peek. They're not just learning how to lie, they're getting really, really good at it. So what's happening in their brains to cause this change? It's this giant cognitive leap called theory of mind. And it's basically the ability to realize that what's inside your head, your thoughts, your knowledge, is different from what's inside someone else's head. Think about it. To tell a good lie, you have to know that the other person doesn't know you peeked. It's actually a sign of a really sophisticated developing brain. Okay, this all brings us to an even bigger question. If lying is so hardwired into our development, where did it even come from in the first place? So let's zoom out a bit from how a single person learns to lie and look at the deep evolutionary roots of deception. So why did this trait evolve in the first place? I mean, we usually think of lying as a bad thing, right? So why would evolution favor it? Well, researchers think it popped up not long after we developed language, and it gave us a powerful new way to compete with each other. I mean, just think about it like this. For our early ancestors, there were pretty much 2 ways to get what you wanted. You could use brute force, which is super risky and takes a ton of energy, or you could use your brain. You could use deceit. It's a much lower risk strategy, right? It's all about outsmarting someone, not overpowering them. It's a high reward game that relies on intelligence, not just muscle. And the ethicist Sigilla Bach just nails it with this quote. She says, it's much easier to lie in order to get somebody's money or wealth than to hit them over the head or rob a bank. I mean, it's just true. Lying is often the path of least resistance. It was a total game changer in how we compete, a shift from brute strength to pure strategy. Okay, so let's recap. We've basically established that we're all natural-born liars. But that brings up a really interesting paradox, doesn't it? If we're so good at dishing it out, why are we so bad at spotting a lie when we hear one? Yeah, this is the other side of the coin. Our amazing ability to lie is matched perfectly by our incredible vulnerability to being lied to. And the reason for this, well, it goes all the way back to the very foundations of human society. There's actually a term for this, the liar's advantage. And here's the simple truth. Our brains come with a factory default setting, and that setting is trust. We just don't walk around all day suspecting everyone is lying to us. We automatically assume people are telling the truth, which makes us, well, it makes us naturally pretty gullible. And there's a really good reason for that default setting. It's an evolutionary trade-off. As the psychologist Tim Levine puts it, the benefits we get from trusting each other are just massive. I mean, society literally couldn't work without trust. It's how we build relationships, share knowledge, cooperate on huge projects. So the incredible value we get from all that trust far outweighs the cost of getting fooled every once in a while. And you see this play out in the real world all the time. Remember Frank Bagnall Jr., the guy from Catch Me If You Can? He just put on a pilot's uniform and bam, people believed he was a pilot. Why? Because why would you even question it? It's the exact same reason phone scams are so effective. Your phone rings, the caller ID says IRS, and your brain's first instinct is just to believe it. That's our trust default at work. All right, so let's bring this all into the modern day, because in our final section, we're going to see how this ancient brain of ours, with its talent for lying and its default to trust, is clashing with 21st century technology. And the results are, well, they're a pretty big deal. And this is where we run into a huge problem. We are trying to navigate this incredibly complex, lightning-fast digital world with a brain that evolved for small tribes and face-to-face conversations. That mismatch, it creates the absolute perfect storm for misinformation to thrive. What this means in the real world is that we are biologically wired to accept information that confirms what we already think is true, whether it's actually factual or not. That's exactly why fake news just explodes online. And what's worse, even when you prove a lie is a lie, the correction often doesn't work. The damage is done. Technology has basically put our ancient tendencies on steroids, creating a whole new Wild West for deceit. Cognitive linguist George Lakoff has a great way of explaining this. He says we all have these mental frames we use to make sense of the world. And when a new fact comes along that doesn't fit into our existing frame, our brain's defense systems go on high alert. We'll either ignore it, ridicule it, or just dismiss it entirely. And that, right there, is why just bombarding people with facts almost never changes their minds. So all of this leaves us with one last massive question. We know our brains are built to both tell lies and to believe them. And now we live in a world where technology can blast those lies around the globe in a split second. In an age of endless information, how do any of us tell the true story? That's the real challenge, and it's one we all have to figure out together.